The last sound. Can you hear the sound of a heart breaking? Because that morning I listened, and it wasn't mine. It was an ordinary Monday, one of those in which the world walks in silence while the city wakes up late. Daniel, 27, an app driver for 3 years, followed the usual route, with a headset only in his ear and a bottle of coffee in the cup holder. The request came in at 7:32 a.m., Central Neighborhood. Passenger, Helena, 24 years old, 8 months pregnant, 5-star rating. He descended slowly, holding his belly in his right hand and an examination folder in his left. "Are you okay, lady?" Daniel asked, opening the trunk. "It's okay. I think the baby turned at dawn." "It's tight in here," she said, with a smile that hid a discomfort. "Let's take it easy," he replied, adjusting the back seat. Helena got into the car. The destination was the hospital. It was supposed to be a quiet race. It was supposed to be just another day. The traffic lights flashed yellow. The car radio reported a fire on the other side of the city. Daniel tried to stay calm as he dodged a traffic jam, taking an alternate route through the neighborhood. Helena began to sweat. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked. "No, it's just, I think I'm going into labor." Daniel's heart raced. He increased the speed, carefully. But something that day was out of place. The cars seemed slower, the streets narrower. And then it happened. A black SUV ran a red light on a blind curve. Daniel only had time to turn the steering wheel hard. The world turned sideways. Noise of metal bending, shattered glass, a scream, a brutal silence soon after. Daniel's car was thrown against a pole. The side exploded in sparks. The airbag did not work. Helena was unconscious, the immobile belly. Daniel tasted the blood in his mouth. He tried to move, but his leg was stuck under the crushed panel. The loudest sound there was not that of sirens. It was that of absolute silence, of a time that stopped. The noise of the broken glass seemed to come from inside Daniel's head. He blinked slowly, trying to distinguish whether he was awake or living a nightmare. The smell of gasoline and burning plastic filled his nostrils. The world rotated slowly, as if every second stretched. "Helena," he whispered, coughing up blood. The back seat was partially sunk. Helena's body fell to the side, her face covered by a deep cut on her forehead. Her hand still held the exam folder, now soiled with blood and oil. Daniel tried to pull his body to the side, but could not move. The crushed leg was numb, cold, and the dashboard of the car pressed against his abdomen like an invisible gag. Outside, people began to approach. Someone was screaming for help. A bicycle delivery man ran to the car, tried to open the door. "Lord, sir, do you hear me? Is there anyone alive in there?" "Pregnant, pregnant," was all Daniel could say. The delivery man looked at the back seat, turned pale. He pulled out his cell phone with trembling hands and called 192. The ambulance took only 7 minutes to arrive, but for Daniel, it was like an eternity. He heard fragments of voices, cuts of reality. "We need reinforcement!" Pregnant woman, victim in serious condition. "The driver is conscious, open fracture, possible internal bleeding. Where's the stretcher? The baby is on standstill." "Runs!" Helena was removed first. She was pale, without reaction. Her hands slipped from the arms of the rescuers as if there was no more weight, no resistance. The amniotic sac had ruptured during the collision. The liquid flowed, mixed with blood, through the cracks in the bank. Inside the ambulance, the team was desperately trying to revive the baby. Neonatal cardiac massage, assisted breathing, injections. Nothing seemed to work. Daniel watched everything from inside the rescue vehicle, the pain pulsing stronger and stronger, his eyes fixed on the ceiling.
"Will she survive?" he asked, almost voiceless. The paramedic hesitated. "We're going to do everything possible, okay?" But his eyes said something else. The doors of the emergency room opened like an avalanche of white light. Helena went straight to emergency surgery. The still unnamed baby was fighting against time. Daniel, with his leg in tatters, was taken to another wing. Immediate orthopedic surgery. He had internal bleeding and signs of chest trauma. But he only wanted to know one thing. "Are they alive?" No one answered. It was in that hospital that I discovered what real time is. Not the time of clocks, but the time of waiting, of anguish, of not knowing. It is the cruelest time there is. Daniel's surgery lasted just over 3 hours. When he woke up, still groggy from anesthesia, he was greeted by a raw white light and the constant hum of heart monitors. His left leg was in a cast, suspended by straps. A band wrapped around her abdomen, and air entered her lungs with difficulty. But his first thought was not about himself. It was about Helena, about the baby. "Nurse," he murmured with difficulty. "And she?" The nurse lowered her eyes, avoiding his. "The doctor is coming to talk to you, Mr. Daniel." That sounded like a no. Minutes later, a young doctor in a blue coat and tired face entered the room. He closed the door slowly. He carried a clipboard and a look that mixed empathy and duty. "Daniel, my name is Laura. I followed part of the care of the patient Helena. I know this is hard, but—" She took a deep breath. "The baby didn't resist."
Daniel felt as if the roof had collapsed on him. The heart beat so hard it hurt. And the mother? Helena is in critical condition. She lost a lot of blood. He is in the operating room, in an induced coma. We still don't know if she will react. The silence after that was the loudest Daniel had ever heard. That night, he didn't sleep. His eyes remained open, fixed on the ceiling, as if trying to find some explanation etched into the cracks in the painting. If only I had gone slower. If I had insisted that she wait for an ambulance. If I had seen the other car coming. The if is the beginning of all hells. He cried. Not a pretty soap opera cry. He cried angrily, with shame, with his teeth locked, and his face turned to the pillow so that no one would see him. He had not known Helena before that morning, but now he carried the weight of 2 lives, one that was gone and another that may never return. 2 days later, Daniel asked to see Helena. Still lying down, with tubes and morphine in his arm, he insisted with the nurses. "I need to see her, even if it's from afar. Even if it's for the glass." The hospital allowed it. They pushed his stretcher to the ICU. There, through a blurry viewfinder, he saw Helena, intubated, surrounded by machines with her chest rising and falling artificially. She seemed so small, so far from the woman, that she got into the car smiling. Daniel touched his hand to the glass. "Forgive me. Please forgive me." She did not answer. Not even time answered. Some pains we don't see in the exams. They live between memory and skin, like a wound that never bleeds, but also never heals. The hospital room was cold, muggy, and lonely. Daniel woke up there for the second time since the accident. The artificial light seemed more overwhelming than welcoming. Time did not pass. Or maybe it passed too quickly, he could no longer distinguish. His left leg was immobilized, wrapped in a metal structure that looked more like war armor. He had a deep cut on his face and constant pressure on his abdomen. But none of this hurt as much as the question that echoed every second. Did Helena survive? The sound of the door opening brought him back. It was Nurse Camilla, already known to him. "Good morning, Daniel. How are you feeling today?" He hesitated. I'm breathing. Does that count already?" She forced a smile. In her eyes, Daniel saw the weight of someone who knew more than he could say. She changed the serums, checked the vital signs, but avoided the subject. "Camilla," he said, his voice hoarse. "Is she alive?" She paused for a second. He lowered his gaze, the quivering pen in his hands. "Helena is still in the ICU, induced coma, but is struggling." That sounded like a blessing and a sentence at the same time. 2 days later, the social worker entered the room. "Daniel, I came to talk about the baby." He held the sheet tightly. Are they going to bury him?" "Yes. Helena's parents decided to hold a discreet wake. It will be tomorrow, just for the family." "Can I go?" She hesitated. "They'd rather not. The pain is still very recent. They're looking for someone to blame, and unfortunately, you. He looked at the ceiling, bit his lips. I wasn't going to argue. Deep down, he understood. Deep down, he also blamed himself. The next morning, Daniel had his first panic attack. He woke up sweating, screaming, trying to get out of bed. The sound of the beat, Helena's scream, the glass bursting, it all came back as if it were happening again, in a loop. Help! Someone! She will die. She's going to die. Two nurses rushed in. They applied tranquilizers. They helped him to lie down again. The last image before going to sleep was the one of her exam folder, falling to the ground, dirty with blood, mashed. And there he was, imprisoned, unable to do anything. On the afternoon of the third day, while watching a light rain through the hospital window, Daniel's cell phone rang. It was the hospital number. He answered with his heart racing. Daniel? This is Dr. Alvaro. I am the head of the ICU. I'm calling to let you know. Helena had a slight improvement in neurological signs. He hasn't woken up yet, but the brain is reacting. Daniel closed his eyes. For the first time in days, she felt something akin to hope. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. He hung up, and he cried. This time with a small sigh of relief in the middle of the tears. Sometimes all that's left is a faint breath, an almost imperceptible sound, and an invisible thread pulling a soul back. It was the 14th day since the accident. Daniel already knew the time when the nurses changed the sheets in the ICU. He knew the sound of the wheels of the emergency stretcher, the noise of the heart sensor when it whistled out of rhythm. He knew the routine of that place even though he had never set foot inside, because all he did, since he woke up, was think about Helena. By the end of that afternoon, the improbable had happened. Nurse Camilla entered his room with a different expression. There was tension, but there was something more. Hope. Daniel, she opened her eyes. He felt his stomach turn. Helena? She woke up? Yes, it's still groggy, confused, but she is awake. He wanted to get up. I wanted to run there, but the body was still a prison. The leg, in a cast. The stitches, painful. Even so, he tried to drag himself across the bed. Calm down, Camilla said. She will have to undergo a series of tests. But she asked for you. Daniel froze. The tears came before the answer. He couldn't speak. He just nodded. 2 days later, doctors authorized a quick visit. A nurse pushed Daniel's wheelchair into the ICU corridor. He felt his hands sweaty and his heart beating as if he was going to run away from his chest. Helena was awake, pale, partially intubated, with bruises on her face and her eyes still sunken, but live. He entered slowly, as if invading a sacred place. He stopped by the bed. Hi, Helena. She rolled her eyes slowly. A tear flowed. It's here. I always have been. She tried to smile, but her face trembled. And the baby? Daniel lowered his head. She closed her eyes for a moment, and in that gesture, all the pain in the world fell into silence. In the days that followed, Helena alternated between moments of lucidity and absolute emptiness. At times, he seemed absent, staring at the ceiling as if talking to someone on the other side. Other times, she would ask for her mother, for a dog she never had, or cry without making a sound. Daniel, even though limited, sent letters to her room, small handwritten notes. Today I saw a nurse let coffee cool and remember you saying you hated lukewarm coffee. I smiled to myself. I wish I had stopped at that traffic light. I wanted time to be a button that we could press. But it is not. Sorry for everything. You're welcome, for not knowing. Helena replied with a single note, delivered by Camilla. You don't owe me an apology. The world, perhaps. But you saved me as you could. Daniel read that so many times that the leaf began to fray at the edges. It was there that he knew. Nothing between them would be normal. There was never a before. There was only the after. And this one was being born now, among syringes, crutches, and words written with trembling hands. Some lives are rebuilt in the rubble, not as they were before, but as they need to be after. It had been 3 months since the accident. The scar on Daniel's face was beginning to lose its purplish hue, but it was still burning with the morning cold. The leg, attached to an external metal structure, needed intense physical therapy so as not to atrophy. Every day was pain, stretching, failures, falls. But he persisted. On the other side of the hospital, Helena also began to walk, literally and emotionally. Doctors were not sure how long it would take her to fully stabilize. Her uterus needed partial reconstruction, and with it came the harshest news. She could no longer get pregnant. She listened to it in silence. Then he just said, "What I lost will not come back, so I can only continue with what remained." Daniel was in the physiotherapy room when he found out. He felt the weight of that sentence as if it were his own. A month later, both were discharged almost at the same time. The hospital was left behind, but the connection between them was not. On the first weekend away, Helena showed up at the simple house where Daniel lived with an uncle. He brought with him 2 cups of coffee and a letter folded in 4. "We don't know each other well, right?" she said, sitting down slowly. "We know our pains before we know our last names," he replied. Helena laughed. It was the first laugh he'd heard from her since the accident. A light laugh, but full of meaning. She then took the letter out of her pocket and placed it on the table. "I wrote this when I was still in the hospital. I wanted to turn my pain into something, even if it was on a sheet of paper. But maybe it can become more than that." Daniel read it. It was a proposal. Helena wanted to create a support group for women who have lost children, for parents who have never met their children, for survivors of tragedies, a space where pain was not silenced, it was shared. "If there's one thing this accident has left us," she said, "it's the certainty that we can't keep everything alone." Daniel didn't think twice. "Let's do it together." 2 months later, with the help of a community center, the first meeting of the group, Silencio Scephalum, took place. 4 people sitting on plastic chairs. One of them, a lady who lost her son in a fire. Another, a young motorcyclist who would never walk again. And there, among strangers, Helena read aloud the final part of her letter. "I don't know if I believe in destiny anymore, but I believe in survival. And surviving, sometimes, is learning to take care of the pain of others when we no longer know what to do with ours." The silence that followed was respectful, hot, alive. It was the beginning of something. Some stories don't end at the end point. They continue in the echoes they leave in other people. 2 years have passed since the accident. A lot had changed. Daniel now walked with a slight limp, but he dispensed with the cane. He had calmly resumed his routine without ever driving again. He bought a bicycle, one of those with a basket in front, where he took books and coffee to the group's meetings. Helena, on the other hand, has transformed. From the morning, a strength was born that no one expected. She became a volunteer doula, accompanying the births of mothers at risk. Sometimes she cried alone in the corridors of hospitals, but each time she held the women's hands firmly during the birth of a new life. And to each baby that came into the world, she silently said, "For you, my love." It was his way of keeping his son alive, not in matter, but in gesture. The support group, Silencio Scephalum, Silences That Speak, has become a nationally recognized project. He had already helped more than 300 people in mourning. Stories that used to die in silence now found echo, space, lap. Daniel became a speaker. He spoke in schools, companies, health fairs. But he never talked about himself. He talked about what he had learned from the pain. And that was enough. In one of these lectures he said, "We never come out of a tragedy in one piece, but sometimes the pieces that are left are exactly the ones we needed to carry." Applause. At the back of the auditorium, Helena watched, the teary eyes, but firm. On the 2-year anniversary of the accident, they went to the impact site. The curve of Carlos Becker Street was still there. The crooked post had been replaced, but the marks were on the invisible walls of memory. Helena took a candle. Daniel brought a flower. And together, they placed there, where everything almost ended, a small wooden bench with a sign that said, "Here the pain started, but here we started again." They sat side by side. They remained silent for a few minutes, listening to the city go by. Helena looked at him and asked, "Do you think all this made any sense?" Daniel took a deep breath. "I don't know, but if there wasn't, we created one." At the end of the afternoon, Helena posted a photo in the support group. It was the bench, illuminated by the sunset. In the caption, only, "Not all silence is absence. Some are pure presence." Daniel saw the post and smiled. He took his bike, put his cell phone in his pocket, and pedaled slowly under the orange sky. And at that moment, no horns, no engine, no sirens, everything was peaceful. Because before everything is silent, we need to learn to listen.